Welcome to the Midweek Mailbag, your Detroit Lions midweek podcast, where we answer your Detroit Lions questions right here live on Twitch, on YouTube, and of course, on replay on whatever podcasting platform you like. My name is Jeremy Reisman. I'm the producer over at Pride of Detroit. Excuse me. You can find me at Detroit Online or wherever you find your Detroit Lions podcast of preference, or social media as well. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm a little thrown. Everything is a little bit hastily thrown together. We've got some weird company news that we're dealing with. There's a lot going on in the background, but we're going to be here for the next hour to 3 hours, however long, answering your Detroit Lions questions. And with me to help do that is the managing editor of Pride of Detroit, is the machine, and you can find him at Erik Schlitt on social media. It's Erik Schlitt. How we doing, buddy?
Hey, bud. It's end of the school year, right?
Yeah.
So
sure.
chaos.
Take a word for it.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Yeah,
it's chaos?
Yeah, chaos always. It's there's so much fun stuff. Yes. Well played.
Yes. Anyways, we have a very wide variety of questions this week, which isn't all that surprising. I think most people are fatigued on schedule talk.
Sure.
And there's not a lot else to talk about at this point. So I think people are already kind of starting to turn to some bigger questions about the 2026 season, which I'm all for. There are a lot of big questions heading into this year, and you guys got a bunch of them. So we'll start here with our good friend Phenoms on Twitter, who asked, if blank unit stays healthy all season, the Lions should win 12 games. So, and you can't pick quarterback. So what position needs to stay healthy for the Lions to almost certainly make at least 12 wins?
Well, my initial gut instinct is offensive line, but I actually think they've done a pretty good job with that. And that's also unrealistic for the offensive line to stay healthy. So I'm going to just flip it to the other side and say the interior defensive line. Those defensive tackles need to stay healthy, because if they do, I believe they allow a lot more freedom to be flexible with your scheme, and in turn should allow the edge rushers to flourish. So I'm gonna say like Aleem, Tyleek, and that interior crew. If they stay healthy, that's a really good sign for the success.
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer, because it's not only like those are two really good players that you've invested a lot in, it's also the depth there is a little scary, right? I don't particularly love anyone in the depths of that group, and I think you might have to be relying on, like, there's a reason why we're talking about Kiana Aina as a guy that might make the roster, is because who else is going to play nose tackle outside of McNeil getting some of those snaps and Tyleek getting some of those snaps. My initial thought was the secondary.
Sure.
And it's kind of for the opposite reason, because I actually do kind of like the depth there, right? Like there are playable guys at outside corner, there are playable guys at safety, but your guys are your dudes. Like, you really need a good year out of DJ Reed. You really need Terrion Arnold to take a big step. You really need either Kirby and or Brian Branch to like be playing football games and being those difference makers, because when they lost some of those guys last year, they weren't playing at their best. I think that was kind of more so the downfall of their defense than anything else. There's a ton of there's a ton of speculation and blame put on the defensive line and focus on that edge position, but in a lot of ways, like, them having to cover the secondary not being able to make plays on the ball, the safety position being decimated, hurt, I think, the run defense a lot towards the end of the year. Like, a lot of those big runs that they gave up to the Steelers and Vikings were a lot of errors in the secondary part. And I know they've been put on islands. I know that because pressure was taking as long as it was to cover for them, like, it made their jobs harder. But I think the fact that they were so beat up at those positions was certainly not helping the defense's case. And I think that's what I think ultimately it's telling that both of us picked a defensive position, because I think both of us kind of expect the offense to be okay, right? It's going to be a top 10 scoring unit. It's going to be a top 5 scoring unit. But as we saw last year, being a top 5 scoring unit wasn't enough. They needed more from the full team. And so I think it's smart to look on the defensive side of the ball. All right, next question. Comes from dot dot matrix on Twitter. Says, do you think the Lions' defensive blueprint will change from quote stop the run as a priority to unpredictable as a priority? Personnel changes and successes in unusual defensive schemes like Flores being the indicators.
I don't think it's going to be that drastic of a change in unpredictability. They've always tried to be flexible, and that's kind of where my inkling lies, is that it's really just going to be, they want to be able to be matchup capable. And
Mm-hmm.
so I wouldn't use so I wouldn't say unpredictability. At the same time, I agree that the priority of stopping the run, I expect that to diminish a little bit as well. And based on what they've done on the edge, I am expecting them to maybe prioritize pass rushing a little bit more this season. So I think dot dot matrix is on the right track in thinking that the priority of stopping the run is going to get scaled back a little bit, or maybe less emphasized. But my inclination is that we're gonna see it be a little bit, more focused on pass rush, more focused on having athletes that can, on the field, and being more flexible to match up.
Yeah, I know if we were to ask Kelvin Shepard or Dan Campbell, like, hey, are you going to be more balanced in your approach to stopping the run versus pass rush?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to say no. Like, they're going to say, like, no, we
Correct.
still want to be a team that stops the run first. That is still
Correct.
our defensive philosophy. And I do kind of believe them at that word, at least a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard not to read into some of the personnel changes. It's hard not to read into the fact that they haven't invested in a nose tackle to a top tier nose tackle. Like, you can say what you will
Mm-hmm.
about Jay Tufele, but I'm not entirely sure that's even his best position on the defensive line. You can say, well, they have Kiana Aina, but I'm not entirely sure that's a real investment in the nose tackle position, a UDFA. And even with not that much of an investment in the linebacker position either, after losing Alex Anzalone. Jimmy Roller, I don't want to dismiss the impact that he could potentially have, but I
But
don't
rookie
know.
linebackers take a while.
Right.
In this scheme, they take a while to
Yes,
contribute.
because you're learning every position.
Right. I think the thing that the easiest way to compare this is to talk about how the Lions view man coverage.
Sure.
Like, I think they're still going to be a man coverage team,
Right.
a heavy, quote unquote, heavy man coverage team. But I also expect that to be scaled back a little bit as well. There was a time when Detroit was number one in the NFL at like 48, 49% of the time they were running
Yeah.
man. That got scaled back to like 42% this last year. And at the end of the season, we saw more zone introduced
Yeah.
in a ton of it in week 18, and it was very effective in week 18. And so I think there's still going to be a man cover team, just maybe not as much. I expect them to still be a base team, but maybe not as much.
Yeah.
I still expect them to be a heavy run focused team, just maybe not as much, right? So I
Right.
just expect their extremes to all kind of get scaled back a little bit to more moderate
Yeah.
numbers.
Balance, a little bit more balance. Maybe not like a 50-50 balance. And like you said, still kind of
Yeah.
leaning towards their previous tendencies. The only thing I want to add here is, like, when it comes to personnel changes, the one thing
Mhm.
we still have to keep in mind is how much of this was by choice, how much of this was by necessity.
Well, and
Because
some of it was just by like what was available too,
right,
right?
yes, right. And so, like, you're working on an unlimited budget. Maybe part of the reason you didn't invest heavily in a linebacker is because you didn't have the funds to. Maybe you didn't
Hmm.
invest heavily in a nose tackle that you like because you didn't have the funds to do it. Like,
Yeah.
there's little doubt in my mind that Roy Lopez would still be on this team if he was a $2 million option instead of a $5.5 million option.
Yeah, it's the same thing with safety, right? Like, they said they were interested in safety, but the opportunity didn't fall to them in the draft. And so, And Campbell kind of talked about this ahead of the draft as well, that Shepard had like 5 or 6 avenues that he could go with his defense based on how the draft fell.
Right.
And the draft seemed to line up well with what they were doing in free agency. But there were a couple positions that we thought they might invest in that they didn't. Safety, nose tackle, and that
Yep.
could have just been the board. And so then it just narrows the pass
Right.
that Shep's going to take. And so the core concepts though, man coverage, run stopping, those are all going to be priorities still.
Yep.
But based on who they've been able to acquire, the money they've had available, like you said, I think those have dictated a scaling back of priorities and more diversity.
Right. More personnel
Yep.
differences. Um, like any good coaches, like they are going to adjust to their players.
Yep. Yep.
And but it won't change their overall philosophy. It might change their personnel usage. It might change their
Sure.
like tweak their scheme. But I think fundamentally you're still going to have the same overall goals for this defense. Speaking of the run defense, everyone's Grudge on Twitter, or Kevin McAllister on Twitter, says, what is it that led to the breakdown in the run defense last year, and how can it be avoided this upcoming season?
Um, I really think it's just a collection of things because anytime you're trying to establish the run or trying to stop the run, it's all about how the unit functions as a whole.
Right.
On offense, if you have to have all of your blocks working the correct way in order for, and then the running back making the right decision in order to have a successful run play. One person misses their blocks, and now that's the even no matter if everyone else is doing their job, it can still result in a fail. And the same thing is true with run defense. The defenders have to hold their gaps. The linebackers have to make right decisions, and you have to get support from your secondary. And so down the stretch, the injury, like you mentioned this a little earlier, like
Yep.
the injuries that they had in the secondary, it compromised the linebackers. Then the linebackers had more on their plate. They maybe tried to do more than they should have, which typically happens when teams get stretched because of injury. And then linebackers aren't filling right gaps. Defensive linemen maybe aren't holding right gaps. And I think it was really just a collection of those dominoes that all kind of fell
Yeah.
at the same time. And I know it would be easy, and the preferred thing would be like, oh, the defensive line just didn't do what they were job. It really was a collection of like everybody. Like there were some replacement secondary guys that weren't holding their edge properly. There
Sure.
were some linebackers that weren't getting to their spots, and some defensive linemen that weren't holding theirs, and all of that kind of became a problem. And that's why when you ran into some of these teams that could run,
Yeah.
they just continued to go to the well with the same play over and over because the Lions didn't have an answer the way that they were operating, and that's how they got gashed near the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it too is just like the opponents you were facing, like the Vikings, the Rams, the Cowboys. Those are all teams that ran the ball pretty efficiently last year. The Steelers were kind of starting to figure it out towards the end of the season with some of the 13 personnel stuff they were doing. And I think some people have latched onto that like 13 personnel thing, and because the Steelers were using it, because the Rams were using it, and those are the teams that particularly tore the Lions apart. And I think part of that is true, but I think like you said, it was certainly a confluence of things. I think it was something that also like Kelvin Shepard like probably bears a fair amount of blame too, right? He certainly didn't find the right adjustments when it came to some of those 13 personnel things. And I think it's probably inarguable that in a lot of those situations he didn't put his players in the best position to succeed. All the while he was kind of downplaying all, at least forward facingly, he was downplaying all like the mistakes they were making in the run game. Like, talking about, if you take away these few plays and we're actually pretty good, which was true in some cases, not so true in some other cases. Hopefully he was a little bit more serious about addressing that problem behind closed doors. And I imagine he probably was, but at the same time, he's a tough love kind of guy, and sometimes that's publicly too. A lot of times he'll say something tough about a player and says, and just so you know, I've had these conversations with my players, so I'm comfortable saying it to you guys. So a red flag did go up to me when he kind of downplayed some of the run defense issues they were dealing with late last year. But I'm hoping that an offseason reviewing the film, which obviously like they talked about a lot early in the offseason, like we reviewed everything about our process. We did everything. Like we made sure we needed to go back and check everything and check every box and see what was wrong. I'm hoping that he has a little bit of different feeling of how the run defense was actually performing towards the end of last year, because it was not good.
Two other things that I want to note with that run defensive success. One, if your offense is operating at the level that it's capable of, the other team has to keep pace.
Yep.
Right. And when your offense was faltering in the in the backstretch, that also caused teams to be able to keep pace and be able to focus on the run game more instead of trying to play catch up.
They're doing the Lions playbook from the last couple of years, where you're grinding a team down because you have the lead, because the other team isn't putting up points. It's a really good point.
Yep. And then the last thing is we saw an adjustment in week 18. I'm just going to keep going back to this because I think that game was an important game. And I know we all kind of dismissed it, but like
sample size of one, but
but I really think what they did in that game and what they showed in that game, I believe there's carryover from that. They were getting gashed on the ground leading into that game. The Bears were averaging 142.3 yards per game last season. And in that season finale, they ran for 65.
Right.
So less than half of what they normally do. And one of the main reasons that they were able to adjust to that is because they went into more zone in the secondary. And when you go into more zone, it allows the corners and the safeties to be focused on what's in front of them. They can trigger to the run a little bit faster, and that takes pressure off the linebackers. Linebackers now can focus on and there was a domino effect of that.
Yep.
When you play man, you stress your linebackers to do things. So when the injuries became a problem in the secondary and they couldn't stop the run and the linebackers were stretched, that switch to zone in week 18, it took pressure off of them. And the key, and so like those adjustments are all part of the learning process that Shep had as a rookie play caller, right? And so we hope to see more of that in the future as well. If you run into this problem again and you're like, oh man, we're stretched thin, or we have injuries in our secondary like early in the season that we need to account for, that lesson in week 18 is something that he can take over and say, look, let's do this. Let's change. Let's make this something that we've experienced now. Let's put it into practice and see if we can slow things down a little bit. I think it's all part of Shep's first year.
Yeah. All right. We're going to do one more here and switch to the offense for a little bit. Our good friend 32 Beat Writers on Twitter, the quite literal only aggregator that I enjoy because they mostly just retweet things instead of put things in their own words, asks, what role do you expect Pacheco to have in this offense? Do you feel he'll be the RB2? So I think the obvious answer is yes. Like, obviously he's the RB2 in the depth chart. I think I'm going to tweak the question a little bit here, is how big of a role will that be? And will he split his RB2 duties a little bit? Because I'm working on a piece for Pride of Detroit Direct, just kind of looking at like the lost snaps, the snaps that from last year that the Lions will have to account for with new players because they're gone. And here's how the running back room was split last year. Jahmyr Gibbs had 737 snaps out of, I think it's about 1,090 or so. Call it 1,100. So a little bit, like 70-ish% of the snaps. David Montgomery had 408 snaps. Everyone else on the team had 13. Jacob Saylors 8, Craig Reynolds 4, Sione Vaki 1. So my question is, when you have Pacheco coming in and presumably taking a lot of David Montgomery's roles, is he going to split that with some of the other guys? Like, is Sione Vaki going to get a little bit more of a cut? Is Jacob Sailors going to get a little bit more of a cut? I think that's an interesting idea because, one, I don't know how much you want to put on Pacheco's shoulders, given his injury history, and two, given some like previous comments about they still are kind of intrigued about what Sione Vaki can bring. Is there a chance that he cuts into some of the RB2 role?
So Pacheco last year had 424 snaps compared to Montgomery's 408. Both players missed time.
Yep.
Okay, so like they're about the same as far as what they've been doing. And so in theory, you could just take Pacheco and say, you're now David Montgomery. And I think no one would fault that decision making. In my opinion, I think they're going to scale that back a little bit. And then some of that's going to go to Jahmyr Gibbs, and some of that I think is going to go to the reserves as well. I don't know exactly how they're going to prioritize that. I think that's something we're going to learn in camp.
Sure.
But I can tell you the one name that has been brought up unprompted this offseason is Sione Vaki.
Right.
And I don't want to sit here today and say that I think Sione Vaki is going to get more snaps this season because I am a Sione Vaki stan, and I don't want to look like I'm playing favorites here. I want to remain objective. But the reason I've been a stan of Vaki is because I see the potential in him, and
Sure.
I see the
That's why he was
value in him. Yes. And so I do think Vaki has a chance to increase his numbers. I think Sailors will get that opportunity as well. But they're investing in Jahmyr Gibbs, and this is becoming like a Jahmyr Gibbs centric offense. And so I do expect those numbers to shift a little bit, and would not be surprised if Jahmyr's numbers
Went up.
get closer to like 75 or 80 even maybe. But I'm getting 75 seems in the ballpark.
That is like the other part of this question, right? Is how much does Jahmyr's workload go up? Because I think obviously a big reason why Dave Montgomery didn't stick around was because he saw his role diminishing.
Mm-hmm.
And while the Lions would have liked to play him more, and he probably would have played more had I think that is kind of the other part of this too, is the reason why Montgomery didn't play more is because they didn't find themselves in a lot of like favorable down and distances or favorable, power run the ball, wear the team down situations because they were down a lot more, right? They were trailing in a lot more games. But you look at Jahmyr Gibbs' usage, it went from 57% of snaps in his rookie season, 56 again, a small step back, but actually more overall snaps because he missed 2 games in his rookie year. And then last year he went from 56 to 67. So he took a pretty significant jump last year. If he were to take that same amount of jump, we're talking closer to 80%. I don't think the team is prepared to do that.
I don't think it's gonna be that much. Yeah.
I don't think they want to do that much. Honestly, I think 67 is about where I would want to go. I know you want Jahmyr out there as much as possible because he's a game changer. He's probably top 5 running back in this league. But to me, this team has fed us the line for the past few years. Like, we want to make sure everyone's fresh in January. And as much as I love Jahmyr Gibbs and know he's a big play machine at any moment he's on the field, I'm also aware that if you give him 70% of the snaps, if you give him 900 snaps instead of 750, like, you are increasing the likelihood that the tread on those tires becomes thinner and thinner and thinner as the season goes on, and thinner as his career goes on too, right? It's not just about having him exist now. Like, we're talking about Jahmyr Gibbs' extension. We're talking about, paying a running back for the next 3, 4, 5 years. If you're running him too hard, I'm concerned about the longevity of a position that already is not particularly long-lived. So for me, like, I'm not sure I want Jahmyr Gibbs' overall.
I think we'll tick up a little bit. I don't think it's going to tip up.
Yeah.
Like, so I just was trying to Google real fast. Like, Saquon Barkley is at 73%.
Right.
Like, Jahmyr is at 67. I could see that that uptick to like
Sure.
73. Um,
What's
who's
like
another?
Derrick Henry or Christian McCaffrey? What are those numbers at?
Well, McCaffrey's hard because he always has the injuries, right?
True. He played 17 games all last year, though.
Derrick Henry was at 55%. But
Okay.
that's because they ran Justice Hill as like their speed option
Yeah.
quite a bit. And they had a couple other guys. They used 4 running backs last year. So
McCaffrey was at 83% last year. That's what
yeah,
I'm concerned about. Don't do
right.
that.
Right. Exactly. Because you've seen the injury fallout of that as well.
Sure.
So I'm thinking, you know, being in line with like what Barkley does,
Yeah.
that makes some sense. What about what's the Packers guy's name? Josh Jacobs. Yeah, like
Yeah.
I mean Josh Jacobs is in the 50s. So, um, you know, I don't think he's necessarily an every down back, but he was the rushing leader 2 years ago.
Right.
So,
Sure.
but I think in that 70 to 73%, that'd be nice. I wouldn't
Yeah.
want. I'm with you. I wouldn't want to go up into the 80s. I could see them envisioning it because
Right.
he's such a good pass catcher like Christian McCaffrey is. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm inclined to keep that moderately lower than that.
And to bring it down the depth chart a little bit, like it is a little bit surprising to me that the RB3 role was basically gone last year. I mean, not
It's
that
been
they
gone for a couple. I feel like
kind of,
My
but like
goodness.
Craig Reynolds was getting like a little bit of a role when it hit his quote unquote peak.
He had
I think
100 snaps the year prior, 96 snaps the year prior.
right. That's way more than every other
Than
RB3
4.
last year combined. Now, I think part of the reason maybe for that last year is because like you weren't getting David Montgomery on the field as much as you wanted to anyway.
He was hurt again.
So yeah, he was hurt. Plus, like again, you kept finding yourself late in the game not wanting to use that change of pace back.
The year before that, he had 132. So, yeah, I mean, it's not out of the realm that all of a sudden that
Yeah.
becomes Sione Vaki getting 7,500 snaps.
Right. And obviously with Pacheco's injury history, like maybe that's where Vaki gets his initial opportunities to play a little bit. But to me, Vaki is going to be a very interesting player to follow this year because they've mentioned him, because I think that RB2 role, I don't think it's up for grabs. I think it's Pacheco's. But I think because he isn't like a solidified, proven RB2 at this point in his career, obviously early on he had some success, that maybe there's a little bit more openness to sharing the load a little bit there. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, more of your Detroit Lions questions, including questions on whether they're done fortifying their trenches, some Rod Wood replacement questions, and some dealing with difficult coaches and players in the media questions. We'll have all that and more on this week's Midweek Mailbag. We'll be right back. All right.
And more.
And more. Let's chat with our live audiences both on Twitch, YouTube, and if anyone's over watching us on the feed, shout out to the people on the feed over at prideofdetroit.com. We've got a live thread going over there with the show as well. We'll try to get to all of your questions that we can in a minute. I do want to read off our alerts before we do that. Just shout out the people supporting us on Twitch and YouTube. John Johnson, 19 months subscribed on Twitch. Amber Atkins, 4 months, says my Jason Hansen anniversary since Jeremy loves kickers. Hey, I do love me some Jason Hansen. Don't get me wrong. He was like one of the only players back in the day that stood the test of time. How many years did he play in the league? Like
I want to
15,
I want to say
20?
25, but
Was it 25?
no, it wasn't. It wasn't that long.
It probably was closer to 25 than it was 15 though, honestly. It was 21. It was 21. That's wild. Just seeing a Pro Football Reference that long is hilarious.
Well, and Eddie Murray played 20 years as well. I feel
Yeah.
like right before Hansen.
What's also crazy to see, and I'll just show it on the screen. And of course, like kicker injuries aren't as common, but like to see 16 games, 16 games, 16 games, 16 games, 16 games, 16 games, and then just like 1-8. Pretty incredible. Anyways, shout out Jason Hansen. See, I do like some special teams. Some. Captain James Kirk, 50 bits. Weird company news. Let me take a minute after I go through all the alerts and say what I want to say in that, because the answer is going to be not much, because this news is very fresh to us, and I'm in no place to give anyone updates. But Duckline 39 months says, my Jake Bates anniversary. Today I learned that Jakey B and I share a birthday. Happy belated birthday, Jake. When's Jake Bates' birthday? March 3rd. He's already 27? He's not going to play for 21 years.
You never know nowadays.
Rerun over on YouTube, $5 super chat says, with the recent Ravens Wired video, what made Zion not a good fit for the Lions and a better fit for the Ravens? Same question about Derek Moore.
Well, with Zion, he was more of a traditional base end. You got a lot of good edge setting with him. Not as much pass rush juice, but you had good strength, good run stopping ability. And with the Lions, it appears to me that they were looking for more pass rush, which Derek Moore gives them. There's also a character issue or character questions, I guess, some off the field things, a couple of arrests that maybe needed some explanation that maybe wouldn't have aligned him as cleanly as Derek Moore did, who was more of a quiet leader and, somebody who, played with his hair on fire a lot. So for me, they were very similarly ranked. For me, I know that Zion had a lot more hype than Derek Moore did, but I don't think they were probably that far apart. But at the end of the day, Moore gives them a little bit more juice off the edge, and I think that's probably what they were looking for.
Yeah, it was certainly interesting to see that video and see the Ravens' reaction. I wish we would have gotten a clip of them just stating their opinion on Moore, because I think it's a fair deduction of that video to say that they wanted Zion Young more than they wanted Derek Moore. The Ravens did, and it's pretty much just the moment where Erik DaCosta says, as soon as he sees a line straight up for him, they're doing it for Zion, or they're doing it for Zion Young. God, like he does that. But
I didn't see it.
Once like it was announced that it was Derek Moore to the room, there wasn't like celebration. It wasn't like, yes, we're getting our guy. It was like, it was very calm. It was and then they were like, so we're putting in Young, right? Yeah, okay, go get him. I'm not suggesting that Derek Moore would have been their pick, because I think it's probably not true, but I can't imagine that it was like he was off their radar either.
No, look.
What I also found interesting is they said Zion Young was their number 2 player on the board going into Friday, but they never said who number 1 was. And they said Zion Young was a top 20 player on their board. I don't know. I messed this. I might believe that, but as Liam is saying, like, all these videos are propaganda. All of them.
Sure.
All of them are making hard cuts. Even like when the Lions make their pick and it's announced that it's Derek Moore to the room, there's like a half second that you get a reaction from the Ravens room, and then there's an edit cut there. Like something happens after that we don't get to see, and I don't know. We don't know what that would have been.
Jesse Minter throwing a fit.
Maybe.
Yeah, Jesse, remember, the reason that Moore was connected to them was because Jesse Minter was the DC at Michigan and Derek Moore started for him. Like, so he knows what Derek Moore is all about. I actually think Derek Moore would have fit their system very well. But I mean, Zion gives them a bigger end. And, maybe that's what they needed. That's what they thought they were looking for. I
Right.
haven't studied the Ravens roster too close, but because we don't play them this year, but, um, you know, it's interesting to me the approach that the Lions have taken has just these slight tweaks.
Yeah.
And Derek Moore, I think, is a great example of that.
And to be clear, like, if it turns out that the Ravens, they did want Zion Young more than they wanted Derek Moore, which is probably the case, like, does that bother me? Not really.
No. Mm-mm.
Like, the chances that they would have taken Derek Moore were probably pretty high out there for all the reasons you just listed. Like, he was a good fit. He had, experience with his former head coach. Is there a little bit in me that, like, well, if he preferred Zion Young to
Why
Derek
did it
Moore,
take so long?
well, no, I imagine Minter knows Derek Moore pretty well. So what does he know that made him not want to be the pick? Like, no, honestly, like,
No, I know, but
there's just a little bit of
maybe
that where it's like,
at the same time, maybe he was the number one guy, and
Maybe.
like and
but
yeah,
but I don't think DaCosta
we
would have
don't
had that
know.
reaction if Moore was their number one guy.
controversy between the GM and the coach, maybe.
Maybe this is only their first year together, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me continue to go through these alerts, and then we'll jump into the live questions here from our live audience. And shout out to someone on YouTube. I forgot who they were. They were the first one to point out to me that the live chat on that side was actually cut off in previous streams. It looks like it's filling out nicely now. So thank you for letting me know about that, because I didn't even notice. But anyways. Cam James Hurt 25-bit says, don't love that news. Hopefully the independent company gives you the ability to keep putting out great content and you have support you need to. Best case is that you get more freedom to make POD what you really want it to be with less red tape. Okay, really quick, in case you're catching up with the news, this news is public, so I'm not sharing anything that you don't know if you're reading about it, which is Vox Media is now splitting its assets. Like four of like, I don't know how many platforms they have. SB Nation is one of the platforms that Vox owns. Rupert is it Rupert Murdoch, or one of the Murdochs? Yep. Is buying several platforms off of Vox for $300+ million, not including SB Nation. So everything that he is buying is becoming Vox Media. Everything else is being packaged together into its own entity that does not have James Murdoch. Thank you. That doesn't currently have a name. So essentially, once this deal gets done, SB Nation will be paired with several other platforms to be under some new umbrella that is not Vox Media. We will no longer be working for Vox Media, from what I understand. That is quite literally all I know. I got the announcement, I got the email maybe 30 to an hour before it went public. And there are meetings to be had where certain things get figured out. I don't know what that means for anything at this point. Other than, like, the plan is for there to be two separate entities, not for Vox to buy all this and the other to disappear. The plan is that there are now two different entities that we will no longer be under Vox Media, and that's all I know. I don't want anyone to panic at this point. I'm not panicking at this point. It's certainly, anytime there's like a reorganization, that's scary, but I'm not necessarily that concerned, because I do know that under Vox, SB Nation was one of their more profitable platforms. So I don't think SB Nation is going anywhere. I'd be very surprised. So I just want to leave it at that. I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't want to divulge any information that isn't made public, even if I had any, which I don't. But yeah, that's the understanding of anything. Because it's like so fresh, it did rattle me a little bit this morning, and if I seem a little off, that's probably part of the reason why. But I'm not necessarily concerned. That's where I'm at. Deuce, thank you for subscribing on YouTube. Charizard, Boner, thank you for the 41 months. Hillbelly, thank you for following on Twitch. Papa Steve, 7 months, says, why do people keep assuming the Germany trip is akin to a death sentence for their chances to play good football before and after? Yeah, I was actually just on the radio this morning and kind of saying the same thing, where it's like, let's not act like an international trip is insurmountable, right? Would I prefer the team to have a bye week after the Germany game, both for selfish and unselfish reasons? Yes, I would. But the fact of the matter is, like, that's no longer guaranteed. Only 3 of 16 teams are getting that luxury this year. Figure it out. Teams have winning records not having a bye after an international trip in league history right now. So I'm not that concerned. It does suck that Tampa's coming off a bye week, though, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, there's new studies and stuff out there that's saying that teams coming off the byes aren't always
right. Rest differential. Like, people are starting to throw rest differential under the bus and say, like, that's not the advantage that you think it is.
Yeah, you're starting to get to a point where you're finding stats that can counter the stats that you have.
Sure.
We're at that point.
Yes. Is Schlitt German?
Yeah.
Okay. Visit the ancestors, man.
Very much.
Come on, join the plane. Just buy a $3,300 plane ticket for your entire family.
Can we all fit in one seat?
I bet one of them could be considered a carry-on.
Not anymore. You're not allowed to do that anymore.
David Lunch, thank you for the 39 months, subscribed on Twitch. Liberator, thank you for the 11 months, says, love the show and the information you provide. Thank you for all y'all hard work. Appreciate that, Liberator. Thanks. Bearded Blevins.
There you go.
57 months, says, Detroit versus everybody, Lions Super Bowl champs this year, baby. Mrs. Ruby, 64. Are you guys recording right now?
Yeah, they said they can't get back to recording until you read their alerts.
Shout out to Is This for Kids, the podcast by our good friend John Blevins and Mrs. Ruby, where they watch movies for you and suggest, like, kind of give like an age range of where they deem it's appropriate and why it is or isn't appropriate. They're fun, and they're just fun people. Yeah. They're good people. This is her last sub. She unsubbed to everyone? What? Oh. Well, I appreciate your last one.
Well, she's at, my goodness, she has, how many months?
64 months. 64 months, despite the fact that I've known John significantly longer. And he's at 57 months.
Well, he said this could be the year. Last time they won was 57.
Here's the thing too, is that I had to shame John into resubscribing to our channel by pointing out how often I sub to his channel.
What I was saying was, 1957, the last championship.
Oh,
57 months. There's that connection there, John.
Whoa.
I'm just saying.
Kevin James Kirk 25 bits says, you have said Charizard Boner way more than you ever expected to in life. Sure is. This stream, by the way, not for kids. Not for kids. Don't make an episode about us. John and Ruby. All right. We're caught up, which means I can start answering your guys' questions. Which I will try to scroll back as far back as it will allow me to. Actually, before I do that, let's go over to the feed. Let's answer some of the feed's questions. A fella,
real fast. Real fast before we get to that, I wanted to bring up the Germany thing again.
Yeah.
Based on these new rules that they're introducing, that the owners just voted to expand.
Yep.
There's going to be an international game like almost every year at this point. Right?
That's the goal, right? Is for every single team to play at least one.
It feels like it, right? Like I honestly feel like that's why they went to 17 games, so that they can have 8 home games, 8 away games, and 1 international game. Like, I think that's the ultimate goal, right? Because I've been reading some interesting things about how the NFL is utilizing the money from like the entities that they put their like Netflix and
Yeah.
Amazon and then Fox and CB, right? And how it's going to get to a point where they stress Fox and CBS so much that they can't meet the demands of what is required. And then in order for the NFL to keep its growth with a capped out kind of like local network type thing, like how they're going to have to maybe lean into the streaming services a little bit more, kind of
Right.
like how you're seeing NBA do right now.
Yeah.
And the other way you kind of offset that is by going international, because you're making a lot of money off these international games as opposed to and so it's another revenue of stream
Yeah.
that's more profitable than these traditional network TV deals that they get done. And it's crappy for like the
Yeah.
traditional way we consume football, but it seems to be like that's the way the NFL is trending, is it be based on how people consume media and television nowadays. So it's an interesting thing that's gonna how it's gonna play out the next decade.
I've heard some experts weigh in on this exact phenomenon as the NFL pushes more into more streaming platforms, that at some point it's going to hurt them in the long run, because as some of these
Yeah.
streaming platforms are owned by like mega corporations like Amazon, at some point it's going to be so expensive for Amazon that they're just going to be like, listen, we're a business that can get by without the NFL. We don't
Right.
need you.
Right.
Like it's becoming a losing proposition, and then you're going to start to see streamers fall out. And then what happens
Well,
after that?
right, because like Fox and CBS need the NFL,
Yes.
Amazon and Netflix don't.
Don't. Right.
Right.
And
But
so
you're
as the
getting
price
more
goes
money,
up and up and right.
right, from
They're
Amazon and
outbidding
Netflix.
each other, but at some point
right.
those streamers are going to back out, and then what happens? Is there some sort of market reset where like
But I think that's the international stuff that they're doing is
yeah,
their safety net.
right. Yeah.
All right. So my point was, I, I'm expecting to be able to. If I don't get to Germany, I still am expecting to be able to go to one of these
Go next year.
games. Yeah,
Just
that's
go to Germany
where I was
next
going.
year. Yeah.
That was a heck of a tangent to get back to my original point. Is that yeah? I think there'll be another opportunity, and I hope that's true for a lot of people who are
Yeah.
staring at a $3,000 plane ticket and saying,
No thanks.
"Man, I don't know about that."
Yeah, and the ticket prices for the games right now, not they aren't officially single game tickets, aren't on sale yet, but like some of the secondary market stuff for the Germany game is just out of control.
I my advice on that is from what I've been told, and again, this isn't football really. This is just like ticket sales
Yeah.
in general related, is that it's better to wait for the box office and gamble that you can get those tickets,
Yeah.
as opposed to jumping on those secondary market tickets now,
Yeah.
because the price markup is just crazy. Like for
Yeah,
example,
everyone's looking for tickets for now. Like this is like
right.
even in like a month or two from now, people aren't going to be as dialed in because the schedule just came out.
So my wife and daughter went to see Hamilton over the
Mm-hmm.
weekend, and when I was looking at secondary market prices before they went on sale at the box office, they were about three times more than what I ended up paying going through the box office. And instead of getting like balcony seats, I got them like row 12 seats for like a
Wow.
third of the upper level prices, right? And
That's
so
wild.
or the secondary, secondhand price. So it's it's a bit of a gamble, but like I don't know, like if it's a price thing, like I if as much as you can avoid those secondary ticket sale markets, that's your best bet.
Yeah.
I hear they go fast though. If you're going to wait for the box office, I hear they go fast.
There is if you go on the like official Germany trip website for the NFL, there's like a sign up sheet where you can sign up for the latest alerts for when those tickets go on sale. And I would suggest doing that. I know.
Yeah.
I know
You'll
American
get some
Express
information.
there's some sort of like pre-sale for American Express credit card holders as well. So if you're one of those people looking for tickets and you have American Express, Google it.
Yeah. While Google still works.
While Google still works. Oh boy. A fella over on Pride of Detroit in the comment section says, how do you feel about the way Brad has managed the cap and extensions thus far?
I'm okay with it. They had a few different ways that they could go this offseason, and they elected to not maximize what they could have done with their extensions or restructures, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
And so I think that was a smart move for the long term. And this has kind of been my philosophy this whole offseason is if you can hit on these draft picks, if you can get these rookies in those important, if you can get all these rookies to find a role, you've got a real chance to set yourself up for 5 years based on the strategy that the approach they've taken this offseason. The trick is you've got to get at least 6 of those rookies to play contributing roles.
Yeah.
And if you do that, then this offseason will look great. If some of them don't live up to expectations or, other X, Y, and Z happens and, there's going to be bumps in the road that you have to overcome, then maybe you're going to regret not throwing more extensions out there to get more depth in certain areas. That's always a gamble. But I mean, everything in the NFL is a gamble. It's just which avenue do you decide to pick? I'm okay with this one, but we're going to see how it plays out too. See if it was worth it.
I think if you're talking specifically about the extensions that the Lions have given out, the only ones you can really have that much of a beef with are Derek Barnes and maybe Aleem McNeil. Aleem McNeil was obviously more bad luck than anything else, but you could certainly make the argument that they did it earlier than they needed to. I do think at some point
that DT market was exploding though. Like it was going up. I don't fault them too much for that, but I hear what you're saying.
At some point, I do think they're going to have to be a little bit more selective because it does kind of feel like they're like, oh, you're like a good to great player for us. Like we're giving you a market setting extension. I was a little surprised by the Jameson Williams extension. So far it's been fine, but I was a little surprised about when and how much it was at the time.
I think that starts this offseason. Those hard decisions.
It does, but at the same time, it certainly doesn't sound like the Lions are going to change their approach. They want to re-sign that entire 2020-23 draft class.
No, I mean the next. I mean this coming.
Yeah, the 2024.
In 2027. But the 2024 class.
But those are going to be easier decisions unless those guys start balling out in a hurry because it's not a very good draft class so far.
Right.
So, I guess to me, the point is like, when you have this much of a talented roster, you have two options. One is to keep all of that talent around as long as possible and fill out your depth with cheap guys, whether that's in the draft or free agency or both. Or you're going to have to depart with some of those guys, hopefully get good draft capital for them, and cross your fingers and hope that the guy that you've take to fill that really good player spot is just as good or not as big of a step down. And that is an approach we haven't really seen the Lions take with draft picks. Obviously, this offseason and even a little bit before, they've had to let good people walk. They had to let Carlton Davis walk. They had to let Alex Anzalone walk this year. Amik Robertson. Either way, like you said, it's a risk. You're risking that you're going to be able to find players at a cheaper price to replace those guys, or you're risking sending away a really, really good talent for a draft pick or whatever, do a Tyreek Hill type of trade, that sort of thing. and trust yourself to either draft that replacement or use that draft capital in some other way to get a good player. But I can't fault Brad Holmes for doing what he's done so far, because in general there isn't a move that looks like egregiously bad in the way he's managed the cap. Like, you can obviously have your complaints about specific draft picks or trade ups or trade downs or whatever, but like, to me, they're, in terms of money management, I don't have many, if any, complaints.
So I want to elaborate a little bit more on why I think 27 is an important year, because I think it goes beyond just the draft picks.
Sure.
I think you have decisions on contract bonuses. DJ Reed,
Right. Yep.
Kirby Joseph,
Yep.
Derek Barnes, all three of those guys have big contract bonuses waiting for them. And if they don't perform well, which of them might not see that bonus? That is going to be, I think, where your really hard decisions get made, because not only do you have those three, but then you have Terrion and Ennis on top of that. Like, it's a lot of defensive moves this in the 27 offseason, and a lot in the secondary that they're going to have to figure out, like, what am I going to do here with potentially all of my starters? Because who knows when the Brian Branch deal is going to get done, right? So in the next calendar year, every starting secondary spot will be under scrutiny.
Yeah. And I mean, if 2 or 3 of those go in the wrong direction this past year, the Lions could have, 3 starting spots open next year. And again, like, they're not going to have a ton of cap space. They're not going to have a ton of draft resources to fill those.
They're going to have cap space, but they're going to have to use it. It's going to need, a lot of it's going to go into their extensions, right?
Yes.
Right. And you can't get too crazy with what else is on the horizon. But, like, that's the trick, right? Is how do you manage that next year in a totally different way than what you just managed this year, which was a bunch of 30-year-olds on expiring contracts. Now it's going to be a lot of performance-based players on your defense. Yeah, that'll be the focus in 27.
Speaking of the 2024 draft class, Danny Boy over on Pride of Detroit asks, what would you have to see from the 24 draft class this year for its perception to change from being a missed year to a pretty good class? To me, it would be Arnold becomes a true number 1 corner. Rakestraw stays healthy, and he's the CB3. Gio looks like the swing tackle of the future. Vaki is a special teams eighth with some running back snaps. Wingo gets in the DL rotation, and Mahogany is a plus starter. If all those things happen, which is possible, I would love it.
Sure.
I mean, yeah, it would change the narrative in a hurry. That would go from like a bad draft class to an outstanding one. Do I think all of those things are going to happen? No. First of all, I'm like, Wingo to me is in a very precarious situation, but was he 5th or 6th round pick? So is Manu.
So is Manu.
Yes.
Wingo was a 6th.
Right. So
now I'm going to look it up.
I don't think his future has much impact on the narrative of the 2024 draft class. To me, like, if Terrion is a number 1 corner this year, or I think the assumption is he's CB2 behind DJ Reed right now. But if he's an above average to good to great CB2, that's awesome. That's like very, very promising. Rakestraw.
I mean, we've seen it with Terrion. We've seen those
training camp.
Yeah, but I mean, he's flashed some of those games. He's had some games.
Yeah,
he's just gotta. It's hard to play corner in a man-heavy system. It really is. And so, but
if Terrion turns it around and has a good year, good to great year, and Christian Mahogany becomes the starter at left guard, I think you've already changed the narrative quite a bit. And it goes from being a terrible draft class to average, maybe, like
a little under, because you're hoping to get 3 starters and you probably only got 2.
But like, Vaki is probably going to be around for a while just because of his special teams value, and if he can log some RB3 snaps as well, that's fine. But I think it goes from being a bad draft class to an average one. Obviously, you want more out of Rakestraw as well, but realistically speaking, I don't know how much of a window he has to actually get on the field. Injuries at corner happen, so maybe. Manu's
the one that I'm.
That's why I don't think this will ever be considered a good draft class or a great draft class.
Yeah,
is because that Manu pick is going to stick out like a sore thumb.
Right. Here's the deal. You know how you cover up a miss like Manu, like when you trade that much capital to go get a guy like Manu and he misses, the way you cover that up is with 4 All Pros in that same
2023 draft class.
Right.
With Roderick Martin.
That's how you cover up Roderick Martin, because you're like, look at these 4 All Pros we got. Yeah. Yep. Like that's, but you're not going to get that, right? You're not going to get that in this class.
Yeah.
So you're going to walk away with 2 starters, and it's probably going to, you have 2 starters and 4 backups, and that is under what your desire is. And so in my opinion, that would be Brad's worst draft class.
Sure.
Because every other draft class has performed better than that.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the realistic expectation, but I think calling that 2024 draft class a disaster is premature at this point. Because I do think like Mahogany and Terrion could very well be good starters for you for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
It's not guaranteed that happens, but if you get a starting corner, if you get a starting guard that is with your team for the next 6 to 8 years, that's not a bad draft class. It's not, again, it doesn't match anywhere near the productivity that he's gotten out of the previous draft. Like, no.
Right.
Exactly what Jim Richels just said. I think 2024 is Brad's worst draft class, but it still has a chance to be okay. I think that's a great way of saying it.
I mean, in the amount of guys that they pulled out of those first 3 classes is just lunacy.
Unsustainable.
It rarely happens.
Yeah.
You're talking about like Saints, that one, like there was that one group of Saints draft classes that they put together that were like nuts, that ended up propelling them to like postseason after postseason. And then as those guys dissipated and the Saints got into their cap problems, and they've become what they become. But it's rare to see that collection of talent acquired in 3 drafts like that.
I'm trying to scan for more questions. YouTube is dominating the chat today. Shout out to our YouTube. Sorry, a lot of just good conversation about the stuff we're talking about, so not a ton of questions here. Meme Studio says, prediction on the offensive line and how many sacks they will allow on Goff this season as a whole, and Blake Miller specifically sacks allowed on Goff. So last year, Goff set a career high, correct, in sacks?
Yeah, but he's kind of always been on the upper edge, right? I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
What do you mean?
Like he gets sacked a lot because he's not mobile.
It depends.
He's but I feel like he's always near. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. I mean,
he gets rid of the ball relatively quickly. So like he was only at 23 back in 2022. Then he went from 30. He's actually been on the rise every year since 2022. So it was 23 that year, then 30, then 31, then 38 last year. He did have 35 his first year in Detroit as well. I mean, I expect it to go down. I think a lot of the problem last year was interior related, and Cade Mays has been a pretty solid pass protector. He's an anchor. He's a nose tackle. He doesn't give up a lot of space. So Goff should have some room to step up in his pockets with him there. Obviously, a lot is going to rely on the development of Tate Ratledge, the development of whoever's at left guard. And then in terms of Blake Miller, I don't know. It's hard to say because he is going to be going up against some really good pass rushers. There are a lot of good pass rushers that love to line up over the right tackle these days. And if you're going to give teams a choice, would you rather line up against Penei Sewell or would you rather line up against Blake Miller?
How many sacks did you say he officially had last year?
38. Goff did, yeah.
Okay. Because I'm looking at PFF's numbers from last year. and it says that they only credited the other skill players with 27
The offensive
like
lineman.
give up sacks. No, skill players, all offensive skill players in general. Like
Skill
they're basically
players?
saying, yeah, Dave Montgomery got charged with giving up 2 sacks.
Okay.
Okay.
And they gave
I'm
up
just saying
27? The skill players?
no, skill players and offensive line, everybody.
Okay,
I'm
okay,
saying
okay, okay.
every
Gotcha,
offensive
okay.
non-Goff player.
Okay.
Okay. So essentially they're saying PFF is saying it's on Goff 11 times, essentially is what they're saying. And then they charged someone else the other 27. Of the starters, Decker gave up 2, Sewell gave up 2, Ratlich gave up 2, Mahogany gave up 6,
Oof.
and Glasgow gave up 1. That was what the starters gave up. So I mean, Aushika gave up 3, and he played, barely anything, right? Like he
Yeah.
played how many pass blocking snaps? 168 pass blocking snaps. He gave up 3 sacks. That's not great.
No.
So when we're talking about like Blake Miller specifically, I still think his number is going to be low with the like what he gets credited for, right? Like he's only going to take the blame on giving up, I think, less than 5. That would be my guess. Now, does he give up like 15, 20 pressures, 20, 25 I mean, like I
Sure.
could see that like as
Of
he's
course.
learning because he's a rookie. But I don't expect it the way that the line works is I don't expect any like one guy to have like a huge number. Like I
Christian
said,
Mahogany numbers.
the biggest number last year was 6.
Yeah.
The biggest number the year before was 8. That was Taylor Decker. Zeitler gave up 5 that year. Glasgow gave up 5 that year.
Right.
If we go back to 23, Taylor Decker gave up 8 again. Excuse me. And then Glasgow was right behind him at 3, Montgomery at 2 again.
Yeah.
If we go back to 22,
No one gave up sacks that year.
Dan Skipper and Taylor Decker each gave up 4. But that was like, yeah, that was about it. Like everyone else was 2 or below. And if we go back to 21, 5. And that was rookie Penei Sewell.
Yeah.
So
I don't
could
know.
Miller give up 5 sacks? 100%.
I mean, he,
Like-
he could give up 8. Like, let's be real. Like, he
Yeah,
could.
yeah.
Am I expecting it? No. But, like, if Decker is giving up 8 sacks, and now, again, defenses have the option to go up against right tackle Blake Miller or left tackle Penei Sewell, they're
Well-
going to line up Micah Parsons over Blake Sewell. Blake Miller.
Blake, I will
they're,
take Blake
they're,
Sewell.
they're joining forces.
But I mean, look, even Penei as a rookie gave up 5, right? So
Right.
like we have to be realistic in
Yes.
what the expectations are for him. 5 to 8 is wouldn't be unreasonable. I think he could go 5 or under though.
Sure.
Like I think he's a good enough player. I also expect more help to be put on his side as well.
And also, like, the offense is more formed at this point than it was when, like, Penei Sewell was a rookie,
Sure.
right? Like, the scheme...
And he started on the left side half the
Oh,
year, and then on the
true.
right side half.
That
the
is
year.
true, and it was a last-minute change that they had to make because of Decker's,
Yeah.
late injury there. So, I think there is reason to expect that his rookie season could go smoother than Penei Sewell. Note that I'm not saying he could be better than Penei Sewell. I'm not saying that. I'm saying his rookie season could go smoother because he's entering a system that's a little bit more formed, because he, knock on wood, isn't going to have to change positions a week before the season begins. Obviously, there's going to be some adjustments on offense overall with a new offensive coordinator, but the entire offense
Matt
is
Nelson was opposite Penei that year. Sorry.
Oh, God.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But no, the point just being that, like, the talent on offense is so much better than it was when Penei entered the team, that they can get rid of the ball quicker because they have talented players that can do
Sure.
things with the ball in their hand. They can set up advantages in ways to protect Blake Miller from allowing too many sacks. So, while yes, anywhere from 5 to 8 is 100% on the table for Blake Miller, I also think just because of how advanced the offense has become, that it's possible he has a statistically better season than Penei Sewell did in his rookie year, even though I would not say he is or will ever be a better player than Penei Sewell.
Brett Whitefield adds some context. He's noting that his system attributed Goff with 3 sacks and 7 as just like unblocked situation, and that makes sense. Like I didn't think about that when I said 11 on Goff. That was poor judgment on my part.
Yeah,
Brett clarifies that. Makes a little bit more sense. Thank you.
Kylo Den asked a question that I think neither of us have a good answer for, but I'm going to bring it up anyways. What are we hoping for in the rivalry jerseys?
Oh yeah,
Those are coming this year.
I don't think they're going to be that much, right? That much different.
I'm trying.
You know what I'm hoping for? I'm hoping that they take the black jerseys and then tweak the numbers so that you can read them better. That's what I'm hoping for.
So here's what these are more like artist renderings than what they actually looked like, but they're the basic design from last year's slate. I don't know, man. I don't care. I don't know.
In reality, despite the flair, are they really that much different than what
they are?
Are they?
I don't know. Bit. They seem pretty different.
I'm legitimately asking because I don't pay attention to jerseys unless I can't read them.
They're pretty different. And honestly, I don't particularly like any of them. So chances are I'm not going to like the Lions because I am a traditionalist. I like the Lions Thanksgiving uniforms. I like simplicity, quite frankly. And adding specs to your jersey or weird shading or weird fonts, like that just doesn't do it for me. But I get it. I'm also just an old person.
I just don't want the same color on the same color. You know what I mean?
You don't want color
like
rush.
a same color jersey number on a same color jersey with just an outline, like the white shirt that's there.
Yeah.
I've told you this story before about the Michigan basketball team that did that yellow on yellow with a white outline around the yellow number, and it was like impossible to see. I agree with LJ. I think they should wear 37 buttons on their jersey.
What?
They should wear 37 pieces of flair.
Oh,
just put their own individual buttons.
We're making an Office Space reference. I get it. I get it.
Yep.
Yeah. You make it, just throw a wet blanket on there. Everyone just wear a wet blanket. Just get a blanket, soak it, cut a hole through the middle, and lay it over yourself like a poncho.
Nice.
I think let's jump back into the Ty. I'll get to your piece, by the way, Ty, after we're done. But yeah, thanks. That's a deep pull. That's a deep quote pull from Office Space, which I appreciate. Let's jump back into the show. If you have questions and you're watching live, either on Twitch, YouTube, or on the feed over at Pride of Detroit, save them. Wait until we're done with the show, the recorded part of the show, and we'll answer some more after that. Really quick, what games other than Germany would I want to go to? I'm currently debating 3 other road games with a high probability of me going to none of them. Buffalo.
Dude, if it wasn't on a Thursday, I have an in there and everything. Like it would have been very easy for me to go to Buffalo. But putting that game on a Thursday, I would have driven it. I would have had a place to stay. I would have been able to like get like
Bring the family. You can spend a weekend there now. Buffalo is probably number one. I have a buddy in Carolina, and now that that's a primetime game, little bit more allure.
Now, what is that? A Sunday night? That's Sunday night.
That's a Sunday night. And then Atlanta is the other one. Just because I've never been to Atlanta and I hear good things.
Hang out with Rothstein.
I think that's it in general. I mean, I still want to go to Green Bay, but you're not going to find me dead there in a Week 18 game. Sorry.
It's the same thing with Chicago, right? Like, going to Chicago in late December. Is it late December or January? Whichever
January. Wait.
It doesn't sound fun.
Both of them are January.
It doesn't sound like a fun. Like, I don't want to sit outside in January in Chicago.
To me, it's not even that. It's travel. Like, it's already a pain in the ass to get to Appleton. Add on like snow delays and flight cancellation possibilities. Like, I'm just not going to go through that if I don't have to.
Yeah, I'm gonna look and see if there are actually any games that are like that work in our favor, because I don't feel like any of them
away
are
games.
Any of them are great.
I mean,
there's so many of them that I'd like to go to or think that I could go to, but like,
go to Arizona, dude.
They're not. They don't cooperate.
Arizona's a great stadium. I've been there 2 or 3 times.
I honestly, you know which one? I think the Miami one would be okay. Go to Miami in November. That wouldn't be bad at all.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I booked a ticket to Germany Monday after that Sunday game. And so my plan was to go to that Miami game, obviously, because I have family down there. But now, because I'm flying out of Detroit to Germany,
maybe you should fly out of Miami. Maybe it's cheaper.
I'm not refunding my ticket. I don't even think I can.
Oh. I was going to say, it could be cheaper.
Could be. But I'm not doing it. Do you guys want no Matt? Well, I guess you're not going to get a Madden Sim Germany week, so sorry.
Womp womp. Yeah, if it's not Miami, the Atlanta one might be. I mean, I think you're going to win both those games. That's part of what would make them fun.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right. Sorry, I'm eating on stream. I didn't have breakfast this morning, so because I got blindsided. All right. Let's jump back into the show. Wet blankets should be a Movember giveaway, huh? How do I give them away wet?
Well, you'd have to seal them. You'd have to get them wet and then seal them up so that they can maintain. And then
here's
put
the problem,
cold packs around them, and then ship them with the cold packs, knowing the cold packs will eventually melt, but they just have to sustain long enough.
What you're asking though is I add a ton of weight to something I'm about to ship out, adding
now look,
more expense to this.
Yeah, here's the deal. You got to do what you got to do. if that's what it is, that's how you do it.
Listen, I spent more out of my pocket on hoodies this year than I expected to. They're really nice hoodies, and I'm very happy with them. But I'm gonna have to find out something different next year. They are LJ. If you sent me your address, you should have one by now. And if you don't, can you email me? Because I'll get that fixed. All right, let's get back into the show. Where were we? Craig F. Yeah, email me some details, and I'll let you know. All right, let's get into it. You're asking me to essentially waterboard myself in Lost Oceans? Is that what I'm reading? Soak a wet blanket in water and wrap it around you for 15 minutes? That sounds like waterboarding. Thank you for not saying anything so that I shut up and get started on the podcast. Welcome back to the Midweek Mailbag, here answering your questions live on YouTube, live on Twitch, and of course, on every podcasting platform you can possibly think of. Our next question comes from one of our Pride of Detroit Direct subscribers, who, if you don't know about Pride of Detroit, we have a bunch of bonus content, including a monthly mailbag that lasts about 4 hours long, our First Bite podcast recapping the Lions draft class, and a whole bunch of other awesome written articles as well. Anyways, it gets you priority on some of these midweek mailbags, like Craig F., who asks, everyone seems to be talking about the potential benefits of trading Sam LaPorta, but to err on the side of positivity in the offseason instead, can we talk about what the Lions' offense will regain when Sam LaPorta returns to the starting roster this season?
A dynamic weapon that can stretch the defense down the middle of the field and open things up for everybody else. A pass-catching blocker threat that can cause defensive matchup problems, and a reliable pass catcher in the fact that when you throw anything his way, he tends to hoover it in, and a potential guy who can give you 10 touchdowns on the season.
That was a very succinct answer that I don't know if I have anything else to add to, honestly. It gives you options to be a little bit more personnel versatile as well. As the season wore on last year, I can't imagine they ran a ton of 12 personnel, which they like to do every now and then. Or if they did, it didn't succeed particularly well. I think a lot of the run game slide that you saw last year was due to the lack of Sam LaPorta towards the end of the season. And then, we know what he is as a receiver, right? We know how dangerous he can be in the red zone. We know how dangerous he can be on third down. I think they missed that a lot. Their third down conversion rate was lower than normal, and I think a lot of that has to do with not having Sam LaPorta. He can do so much to the entire offense at every aspect of it, right? I think the one thing that maybe he has to work on the most is pass protection, but you kind of added a lot of pass protectors this offseason anyway, so.
Yeah, like Sam, he's such a dynamic weapon, and I really think for what you're looking to get out of, or what Drew Petzing is looking to get out of his scheme, Sam is just the perfect candidate. Like, he could be your second offensive option, right? Like,
but when has Drew Petzing ever used a tight end successfully?
Well, every year he's been an offensive coordinator.
Oh, right.
Believe.
Trey McBride.
I think that's when. Look, their best game last season, in my opinion, was at Ravens. And we all remember that game for what the defense did, and the couple of big David Montgomery runs on some duo blocks that were awesome.
Yep.
But it was LaPorta that started that game out hot. Yeah. And he's the one that was, in my opinion, like a huge catalyst in making sure that they got the production that they needed. And like, while he's, I think he caught like only a handful of catches, but I thought he had a touch. Did he have a touchdown in that game, or am I just misremembering? No, he just had that slot seam, that pass that he caught early, but he didn't get a touchdown. But he is such a dynamic weapon. Like, you bring him back, and he's going to be a top 2, top 3 option on a weekly basis.
Yeah. The Lions' third down percentage last year was 38.8, which ranked 20th in the league. Last year, or the year before that, they were 47.6, fourth in the league. Now, obviously, there are more factors than just Sam LaPorta missing half the season. Ben Johnson probably plays a little bit into that, but I think his value on third down is where they probably missed him the most, if not as a run blocker.
Jared Goff's quarterback rating when throwing at Sam LaPorta, 134.2.
Jesus. That's insane.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next question here comes from Joe Gorby on Twitter. Says, do you believe the Lions will continue to fortify their offensive and defensive lines through free agency and or preseason cuts? And I'll skip the second part of that question. So do you think the Lions are going to continue to add?
I mean, they have 5 spots, right? So they can. I don't know if how much they will though. Like we've seen some of these articles lately that have suggested like, oh, what's the best fit for this player or who
Yeah.
could match up? And yeah, I've seen some lines being paired with edge rushers a couple of times, right?
Yep.
And I get that philosophy and I'm not against it, but I really think if they were going to add, it wouldn't be the edge like most publications are suggesting. I do think it would be the defensive line. I do think it would be the interior defensive line. I just don't know the talent level that's out there right now, right? Like the last time we talked about a similar situation, we were talking about like Benito Jones and
Right.
since then he's already signed with someone else.
Yep.
And so I think that pool of players that in areas that the Lions need are getting thinner.
Yeah, on the offensive line, I think they're relatively done. They've made a lot of additions to the interior with Juice Scruggs and Ben Barch, and they have a young core of players there that they like and want to see if they can grow and build out a starting role. Tackle, I think you feel pretty good as Larry Borum as your OT3, Giovanni Manu as your OT4. So I think offensive line they're probably done. Maybe they add a body or two to just fill out a full, 3 or 4 offensive lines. But I think even number-wise, they're in a pretty good spot in terms of offensive linemen. Defensive linemen, they're a little shorthanded, and I'm with you that I think it's more likely that they add on the interior than on the edge. I'm not discounting edge completely, but it also feels like you're in an okay spot there with, DJ Wanham is a guy who might be your day one starter. Even after you drafted Derek Moore. Do I feel comfortable about the depth beyond there? No. But here's what I'm pretty sure of. I don't think this team went out and grabbed DJ Wanham for what was it? $3.5, $4 million a year? And then
I'll look it up.
And then in June or July goes, oh, let me just sign, Jadeveon Clowney to a $9 million deal.
Right.
I don't think they're going to do that.
Wanham makes just under 3. Derek Moore makes just over 2.
Right.
I think they're looking at them as kind of a platoon of one person type of thing, right? So you're talking about 5.
Let's not completely discount Peyton Turner. I know the injury history is extremely daunting. I know relying on him to be a starter would be massively risky, but to compare him to Marcus Davenport is fair in terms of what you should be expecting to get out of him. But the difference is he's now edge 4, whereas Marcus Davenport was edge 2 last year.
Right. Peyton Turner makes 1.1, whereas Hassanin is just under $1 million.
Yeah. And Hassanin is the other part of the equation here. And
yeah,
as I think I said after the Lions drafted him, I am never going to discount a player with the kind of heart and motivation as he has, very clearly has, the amount of work he's willing to put in, but we don't know what he is at all.
Right.
So I'm also not going to go into 2026 and be like, oh, well, he's your edge 4. He's great. He's going to have to go out there and earn it. He's going to have to go out there and earn playing time. And as of right now, I have no indication that he's will or won't do that. All right, next question here comes from Daniel P., one of our Pride of Detroit direct subscribers, says, has there been any updates or that you can offer or insights into the search for Rod Wood's replacement?
I don't think there have been any that I've heard. Have you?
No, not really. All I have here is a quote from the owners' meetings from Rod Wood himself, where he said, listen, they've hired a firm to help him do the search. And then he said this at the owners' meetings, and the owners' meetings were early March, I think. Early or late March? Late March. So it's, quote, we'll start meeting with them probably earnest in April. So presumably they've already met with some candidates. We'll kind of go through the lay of the land. We'll do some initial screening of candidates and then probably have a full interview panel with a few, including me, Sheila Ford, Chris Spielman, and I think Bill Ford is going to get involved, and Lindsay Verstegen, the chief people officer. He also later said that Brad and Dan will get to weigh in on their process. And so that's kind of where we at this point. We can probably assume they've interviewed some candidates, because team president is not one of those positions where like you have to formally announce your candidates or who you're interviewing or anything like that. I mean, the last time we saw a team president get hired, it was right after they fired Tom Lawan mid-season. And then they're just like, oh, hey, by the way, we hired this guy, Rod Wood. We know him from way back. Like, that was it. That was the entire process. So this is going to be a much longer process. This is probably going to be a wider scope than it was. I mean, like our chat is saying, according to them, it's a worldwide search, quite literally worldwide. But I don't expect much, if any, transparency during the process. I assume that at just some point in this offseason, I guess that's the timeline update is that Rod Wood said he would plan to step down by the start of the 2026 season. And so that's your deadline there.
Okay.
All right.
Stop talking to the media, please. just stop talking, please.
Speaking of talking to the media, great segue to our next question here from Larry on Twitter. Says, have you ever had a player or coach that was antagonistic towards you or the media in general? Do you feel as media you have the freedom to ask tough questions, and how are those generally received by players and or front office?
Yeah, there's been a couple of players that have not liked the media at all.
Sure.
There have been rumors or things we've been told about players that, what's the right word? They don't like it when other players talk to the media, and then they get on those players and tell them to not do that.
Yep.
None of those players are currently with their team anymore. And a couple of them that I'm thinking of, there might be one with the team still, but there's one that's in Chicago now. There's also one that is been traveling around teams for a while. And I don't know, are we naming names here? Like, I can tell you, Ashawn Robinson. I don't think there's anybody. Ashawn Robinson didn't seem to like the media that much, but I think he was an interesting character in the locker room in general, right? Like he kind of like, he was what he was, and he didn't. Yeah, he was an interesting. I will tell you, I never talked to him in the media, in the locker room, right? But. Yeah, there's certainly guys that make things a little bit more challenging, both directly to us and some of it more behind the scenes.
Sure.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. And listen, like, I think a lot of you know about me butting heads with Aaron Glenn on one or more than one occasion. And by butting heads, I just mean like, he did this to several reporters where like he would be like, oh yeah, you sure about that? And even Brad Holmes, I think, snipped at me once a little bit when I don't even remember. I referred to something as a bloodbath. Yeah. Never once has that ever felt like I'm not free to ask tough questions. Do I ask a ton of tough questions? I mean, probably not as much as I should, but here's the thing about tough questions. There has to be a reasoning behind it. To me, there's no valor in just asking a tough question to be a tough question asker. Like, and I think there are some people in this business that ask tough questions in ways that they either know they're not going to get a legitimate answer, or they're asking it in a way that they unintentionally have boxed themselves out of getting a good answer.
Mm-hmm.
I've said this multiple times on the podcast throughout the years. I think there's an art to asking questions in order to get the answers you're actually looking for. In order to, and not that you want like a specific answer. I'm saying in order to get an answer that is actually insightful. And it's hard. Like, it is hard to ask like a tough question that doesn't come off as insulting. There are some people who do it really well. There are some people that don't do it particularly well. It's not easy. Because you don't want to come off insulting. Because if you come off insulting, then it becomes antagonistic, and their response is going to be more directed towards you than the question. And you don't want that. That doesn't serve anybody's purpose. I will say, with most people, most like coaches, that's not much of a problem anymore. I would say like Kelvin Shepard can be a little bit of that. At times, Mark Brunell can be a little bit like that. But in general, I think this coaching staff has made a very good environment where they can answer questions without feeling like they have any chance of being retributed against from the team. They have a good enough relationship with the media where they know the questions that we're asking are not coming from an antagonistic point of view, but rather just trying to get information. Players, it's hit or miss. Players, and I don't think there's any point in me naming names with players, but there are some players where you will feel the freedom to ask any sort of question you want, and then there are others that you feel like you might have to walk on eggshells with. It's hard to break through that sometimes, but like, you have to work on it, and sometimes it takes years to break through on a player. Some are willing to put in that work. Some just avoid that player all the time. I've probably fallen into both camps before, but it's tough.
Yeah, it depends, and like you said, the players' perspectives change, and their accessibility and availability changes as well. Like when you start talking to a player when they're a rookie, you get a lot more one-on-one time, but then as that player establishes themselves, draws more attention, it gets harder to get them more one-on-one, and then it makes it harder to get, extrapolate the information that you want sometimes. And the same thing can be true in reverse. You can get a guy who's standoffish and grows into a role like Taylor Decker did, who didn't want to talk to the media his first 5 years or through the Patricia era. And by the time Patricia was gone and Dan was here, Decker, he learned that the media wasn't out to get him.
Right.
And, and he became a well appreciated, charismatic and honest. And he was someone that I thought was tremendous to talk to. And so you can find you have to find that balance with every individual player and every individual coach. There's not like one system that works, or doesn't.
It's like how this team approaches coaching, right? Like there's not one style of motivation that's going to work for every single player. Some people might need the rah-rah guy. Some people might not need the rah-rah guy. With players in particular, it's about trust. And if I can be completely candid, you come in as a reporter behind the 8 ball, because most players do not trust the media. Most Americans don't trust the media. The media has a bad reputation right now. So the assumption is, I'm not going to talk to the media because you are only going to make things hard for me. And so the way you build trust is you report accurately. You make sure if you are using quotes, you are using them in their full context. You're not throwing misleading things out there. You are not throwing antagonistic takes out there. Doesn't mean you can't be critical, but if you're being critical, you better come with knowledge, right? Like, you better come from a place of, this guy's terrible. Look at him make this mistake. And then anyone in a NFL position room would be like, you pointed out the wrong guy. That wasn't even that guy's mistake, right? If you don't know ball, and you can not know ball, but if you come from a place where you say like, hey, I think one of my favorite things to do in that locker room is to come to players and say, hey, what happened on this play? I'm not going to write anything on it. But like, it's showing that player, one, that I'm interested in their job, two, that I am giving myself up knowing I don't know everything. And three, like, I'm striving to know their jobs better. I'm striving to know what's actually happening a little bit better. If you do that with players, I think that's a great way to build some trust. And it's also a great way to learn the game a little bit better. And so that to me is like, if you're looking for an in, like let's say you're entering this business. I know we're going inside baseball here a lot, but it's the off season. If that's something you're looking towards doing, I think that's a great avenue to build a little bit of trust, to know the game a little bit better, and more importantly, like put a face to a question. Like pull a player aside, say, "Hey, I'm Jeremy. I work at Pride of Detroit. I was just watching this replay of this play and don't quite understand the blocking assignment there. Can you tell me what you were doing and why you did
it?" And the one thing I also want to point out with Detroit specifically is that they have an excellent PR team that helps protect and prepare those young players for the media as well, so that they don't get caught like
Yeah.
in that mode of not trusting the media.
Right.
They have a way of they have a very efficient way of introducing players to the media. They help prepare them as well, and they're very good at watching out for the player and making sure that that player doesn't get into any uncomfortable positions, while they're figuring out how to talk, and they do a tremendous job. I got called out for teasing them about it last training camp, but like I think I misspoke, but they do a very nice job of getting the younger players acclimated to what to expect, so that the relationship can be symbiotic, right? Like the players can get their message out,
Yep.
and the media can get the things that they're looking for. And it's like I said, it's a unique system, and there's going to be like times when, funny things happen. Like, there was an intern, that jumped in and tried to shut an interview down with Graham Glasgow because they thought Graham was maybe going down in a rabbit hole that he wasn't comfortable with. But in reality, it was just Graham being Graham. You know what I mean? Like, he was just
anything
being
that was
kind of
perceived
silly
as
and funny.
nervous energy was just, that's what Graham was like.
Right. And so like, that's why I say like they do a good
Yeah.
job of making sure the player feels comfortable.
Right.
But you learn, you learn these things as they go, and it ends up being a very good. I think the Lions have a good system because
Yeah.
I think their PR staff does a really nice job of making the players prepared and, like I said, available so that the media can get the things that they need.
All right, let's finish with two more questions here. Patrick K., one of our Pride of Detroit Direct subscribers, said, Mina Kimes and Ben Solak just dropped a QB rankings podcast with Caleb Williams and Jordan Love in the top 10, with Jared Goff down at 14. Do you have any thoughts on this blasphemy? So I didn't get a chance to watch the whole podcast, but I did watch the methodology, which was they were drafting quarterbacks essentially like one by one, and they were drafting it based on three parameters: a 3-year timeline. Contracts don't matter, so like their current contract is, it's just the point is to just like draft the best quarterbacks over like the next 3 years, and then they tried to emphasize that you're not drafting the player and the system; it's the player separate of the system.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. I have a bigger issue with this than I thought.
Right.
If that's
right. Because you would think like, okay, maybe Caleb Williams is a top 10 quarterback in Ben Johnson's offense, but outside of Ben Johnson, you pull him out, is he still a top 10 quarterback? And I think probably not.
Right. Finish. What's the third point? Was that the third one? That was it. Okay.
That you're taking them out of their scheme.
All right. Mobile quarterbacks get a lot of advantage in this if you're talking about a systemless situation, right? Yep. Youth is going to be heavily favored in this system as well, right? So youth, mobility are all going to be why guys like Love and Williams are probably viewed more than Jared Goff, who still holds the stigma of being a cast off, right? But Caleb isn't accurate. He's just not. He's not accurate at this point in his career. Now, so with Caleb, you're banking on him developing. And if that's part of their argument, fine. Okay, like I get it. But the difference between Caleb Williams' accuracy and Jared Goff's accuracy is night and day. Okay. And like for me, what is the biggest thing that you need in the NFL as a quarterback is you need to be able to be accurate and you need to have great decision making. And young quarterbacks often lack both of those. So while they can make those decisions that they want, if I am if I'm the Lions and I'm in the situation that I'm in, I think Jared Goff is the perfect quarterback for them in this situation. You could argue that you could drop Jordan Love into this Lion situation and he would be on par or maybe, slightly behind Goff because again, I think Goff's more accurate. But to put Caleb Williams in the conversation in what the Lion situation is, I think is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But again, I'm looking at it from just a Lions perspective. But I think I mean, I don't know. It's hard for me to get out of that Lions mode to try and
Sure.
be
Objective.
like if all of these parameters gone and you're just trying to look at talent, I still have a hard time
Right. Because,
getting over the accuracy issues.
well, and here's the thing, like, I think even the most coaches that are most in favor of mobile quarterbacks will tell you this one thing is true. No matter what else is the case, you need a quarterback who can throw from the pocket.
Yeah.
That is like the number one skill you need to have to succeed in the NFL. Because mobile quarterbacks are a dime a dozen these days with the college game as it is.
Getting there.
In order to discern yourself, you have to be able to throw accurately, decisively, and smartly from the pocket. Goff can do that, which means he can fit multiple systems, which means he can do a lot of things. I think we're currently living in an era of quarterbacks where we're kind of missing that top tier. It's thinning out, right? Where like Matthew Stafford has probably worked his way into maybe that top tier. Patrick Mahomes is there. Josh Allen is there. I'm trying to think of like other guys like Lamar Jackson is there. Joe Burrow is there. But that's kind of it. And I mean, I just listed out what 5-6 guys, so it's not nothing. But I think that next, like I think the media is searching for that next guy to join that group, and that's why there's this loving of the young quarterbacks. There's this Jordan Love. There's Caleb Williams,
Jaden Daniels, right?
Daniels, sure.
Right.
Drake May, right?
May. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think there's a little bit of an inflation of those guys and a little bit of undervaluing of the guys who have been around and been playing at top 10 levels for, I don't know, a decade when it comes to someone like Jared Goff.
Yeah.
And
I
because
still think people are stuck on Goff. Like
they've
got this idea in their head and that's what it is.
Well, this year will be interesting because he has yet another offensive coordinator in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
He still produced top 5 numbers last year without Ben Johnson, but because the offense as a whole wasn't as a well-oiled machine, I think there's a belief that some of that is on Goff, and I would put very little of last year's offensive failings on Goff. But if he if he continues to go from offensive coordinator to offensive coordinator and produce at top 5, top 10 rates, like say what you will about his surrounding cast, and yes, he's got a lot of really good receivers, and yes, the offensive line has a couple of like elite parts to it. You still got to at some point give credit for Jared Goff and stop like with this. Oh well, he's first he was a Sean McVay merchant, then he was a Ben Johnson merchant, and it's just like at some point. The factors have changed enough where you have to just say, maybe those offensive coordinators, those offensive minds, maybe they benefited just a little bit from having a really good, reliable quarterback.
Yeah, it's in a lot of ways like what we saw the media say about Stafford when Stafford was in his early 30s. It's that Stafford never made anyone better. And now it's, oh my gosh, look how much better Stafford's making people. And
Right.
then now they're reflecting back and going, oh, maybe Stafford was a reason why Golden Tate and Nate Burleson did what they did. Maybe it
Right.
wasn't just Calvin Johnson,
Right.
right? Um, and I think Goff is the same way. You have to credit Goff for helping develop um, a guy like Amon Ra. You know
Sure.
what I mean? Who
Yep.
needed like Amon Ra was such a professional route runner, like at USC, that like you expected him to just step on the field and be there, but it took him, a handful of games, and it was Jared's trust in him, and then they evolved together. But like Amon Ra maybe doesn't do as well with the quarter. If he had a quarterback like Caleb Williams, Amon Ra may not be what Amon Ra is now.
It's
You know what
possible.
I mean?
Yeah.
And so I don't think I still think it's a very similar story to that we've seen before,
Yeah.
and it maybe has to do with the fact that he's wearing Honolulu blue.
Maybe a little bit.
No, but I mean
Yeah.
that like legitimately. Like
Sure.
we talk about this during draft season. People get in their minds that a quarterback from Ohio State isn't going to be good in the NFL because they went to Ohio State. A lineman from this school isn't going to be good because they went to this school. Like people get those things in their head. Like Detroit's quarterback isn't going to be good, and this player from this team isn't. And there's often those blind spots that occur in amongst the national meeting. I feel like we're seeing it again.
We all have our biases for sure.
Sure.
All right. Last question comes from Fud Meridian. Says, given the incredibly short list of DBs that have been able to return to the same level of play after suffering an Achilles tendon rupture, Grant Delpit may be the only one. What is your level of concern that Brian Branch can have the same impact upon return? All right.
Go ahead.
There are a couple things here.
Yes.
I have some recent examples to kind of further Fud's point, but also push against it. But before I even get into them, we should point out that sample size is relatively small if we're going to limit this to Achilles tears, very talented corners and or safeties. And I limited my search to safeties, which like there is no master list of like, here's all the guys who had Achilles injuries at these positions or even
Sure.
at the NFL. It's tough, and I didn't have a ton of time to like do extensive research on this. But like you also kind of have to shorten your search here to the last 5 or 10 years too, because
Massive advancements.
massive advancements in the medical field. But
Specifically with Achilles, because I
yes,
wrote an article like
right.
a while back that talked about like how 15 years ago this was a career ender. 10 years ago it was,
Yep.
maybe you can come back after 2 years. Now in the last 5 years it's like, oh, some of these guys are coming back after 6 months.
Yep.
So like these 5-year jumps have been huge.
Yes. So Landon Collins was like a Pro Bowl, All Pro type of player for his first years. Suffered an Achilles injury in 2020 at 26 years old. He played 13 games the following season, was out of league in 2022. So like at 28, 29, he was out of the league. So I think that is an example of, yeah, it probably had a profound impact on his career. He also dealt with other injuries before that, but the Achilles injury felt like kind of maybe the final blow. Keanu Neal had an Achilles in 2019. He was only 24 years old at the time, but he did play for 4 more seasons after that. He 15 starts the next season, became more of a rotational guy the next 3 years. But even before his Achilles, he also had an ACL, so there were probably a lot of things at factor there. It's hard. It's hard to suss through all the noise.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like there should be a concern that Brian Branch may never be the same player. It's a level of concern. It's certainly warranted.
Sure.
That like this could impact the trajectory of the rest of his career. No doubt. But we're also talking about a young player. We're also talking about advancing medical research and strategies and surgeries and rehab to the point where we are carving out new data as things are unfolding. And it is so hard for me to say with any sort of certainty that like, oh yeah, he's never going to be the same again, or oh yeah, he's going to bounce back, and by December you're not even going to notice a difference. I don't know, but I'm also not willing to. I'll look at data from the past, but I'm not willing to like rely on only data, because data is so quickly moving, and I just think the sample size is incredibly small right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's the key is that at certain positions, you utilize your Achilles for different things,
Sure.
right? And for Branch, he's going to utilize his Achilles in a lot of ways that a running back uses his Achilles, right? Which you're talking about cutting, explosion, change of direction. And those are things that are important to his game.
Yeah.
And that's really the fear, right? The fear is if he has now lost that ability to explode off of that leg that has the repair, then that will impact his game. And you could see it unfold like that. At the same time, you've seen running backs at a very high proportion of a very high rate return from Achilles injuries early, but then not look as good as they did prior.
Yeah.
Right. And so the question then becomes, are they not having that success because they came back too quick? Are they not having that success because the injury has limited their ability? That's what I think we don't know. And that's the trouble part with this limited data.
Yep.
Is we don't know post injury what is limiting a player in their return. And that's, I think, a very hard question to answer at this stage, because one, the technology in the medical field with these surrounding Achilles and NFL players is advancing so quickly. And then two, we just haven't been far enough removed from this new data to really understand what it means. And so if you're a bigger player, it's harder on you because it, like a defensive lineman, it's harder on you. It could be a career ender because of your weight. At the same time, if you're a plotter instead of a reactor, you can have a career because you're not exploding off of them. If you're just like if you're an edge setter, right, instead of a three technique, right? So the unfortunate part with Branch is the position he plays, and the hope is you're getting you're able to not rush him back, allow him to heal fully properly, improperly. And I think the Lions do a good job of taking their time with these players with significant injuries. They don't rush them back. And then two, it's really his age, right?
Yeah.
Like you pointed out, like you're hoping that he's young enough that he can heal faster. Because again, that typically happens, right?
Yeah.
So you're banking on age and the fact that he makes a lot of plays because of his intelligence, and that he'll be able to regain some of that explosiveness that he had prior. But there's a fear there as well, which is, I think why an extension for him is probably going to be the last of the what are they, quadtuplets or whatever? What's it?
Quintet
of those four guys that are expected to get extended. I expect Branch to be the last one.
All right, we'll close things out there. If you want more mailbag content, you can either watch the replay of this on YouTube or Twitch, as we spend some time before and after each segment to chat with our live audience. You can also become a Pride of Detroit Direct subscriber, where we do monthly mailbags just for our subscribers. You can go to prideofdetroit.com/subscribe for that. But until next time, I'm Jeremy. Over next to me in one of these directions is Erik Schlitt. Thank you all for listening. It's chaos. Be kind.
Recording stopped.
All right, let's hang out.
So quick. Dan asked, did Aleem rush back? Aleem's injury was ACL, so it's a little different, but I don't think he rushed back. That's a standard, like you're going to have a slow recovery in the year after your ACL if you're a big defensive or offensive lineman. That's, I think, standard. That's why I've in the past said that like Aleem wasn't fully back, and people have been, yelled at me that he played half a season, and I'm like, yeah, he did, but he wasn't all the way back,
Right.
recovered from that. Like there's a you got to play for a year, and Branch could have that similar type thing. A lot of these guys get an injury, and then you've got to play for a year before you start getting back to kind of where your normal self is. So that's the tricky part with Branch is and extending him is if he comes back mid-season because you don't rush him, can you get half a season of information enough to know, okay, yeah, I feel confident in extending him or not? Because with Branch, I could absolutely see him based on what we've seen running backs do, like be ready for like week 1 type of thing. Because these running backs have come back so quick. I actually would be more concerned if he was like, "Hey, I'm ready for training camp." You know what I mean? Like that.
Slow down, guy. Big guy.
Because some of these running backs have come back in like ridiculous paces. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
like the Cam Akers thing came back real quick, but like did not
6
look
months,
great.
lessons like, or just less than 6 months. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I gotta get my feeling, I gotta maybe go back and look at this a little bit deeper to like figure out like what's happened since I last wrote that article. But I read medical journals and all kinds of crap for that article back in the day. But I don't know. It's moving so quick with ACLs.
Yeah. And Achilles.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm moving very fast with
both.
Yeah.
Here's a great question from Baller Amelia, who I finally got his name right. How much do I have to pay to get a Detroit Lions breakdown Yeti cup like yours?
I actually looked into trying to
You did. I remember
get
this.
them because I got
show it off. Show it to the people.
I got the exam. I got the opportunity to make them basically for free.
Towards your mic. There you go.
Right. And then it has on the back Kool-Aids and curses.
Nice.
Which is Joe and me, essentially. I'm the Kool-Aid, if you didn't know that.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I was able to get a couple made basically for like free. And then I got into talks with a Yeti rep, but like, so this cup, this normal like Yeti cup would be like $25 or $30 or something like that normally. And then to get them engraved, it was like another like $10 or $15. And then like to ship them would have been like another 10. I forget what it was, but basically like for someone to get one, it would have been like 50.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you can go to your local like store and buy one of these for 25 versus me trying to like sell them for 50 for no profit, you know what I mean? Like just straight up give you what I'm getting offered. I thought $50 was too much. And so I was like,
I bet you're going to see a couple of messages here be like, oh, I would easily bought that for 50.
Well, I still have the contact with that guy, with the Yeti guy. But yeah, I got them made for me and Joe, and that was all I had. That was what I got for free. And then the discussions went after that. I didn't think people could do it. I didn't think people would do it. That's a lot of money to ask someone to buy.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And then if I tried to like make any money off of it, which I wouldn't, like that would have been even more. That's ridiculous.
Man, you're a commodity. People want your stuff.
Stop it. Stop it.
Erik would have a Yeti guy.
You should see my coffee mug. I got a
I'm
Yeti
starting to
coffee
like
mug I drink out of
slide deeper and deeper into caffeine consumption, and I'm afraid. I
I
I
have
don't
one of
want to be a
those
coffee
like
drinker, but
I got one of those like
fine.
14-ounce ones with like a handle. It's a cool one. It's a little short guy.
Little short guy.
It's good though. And then my wife has. I got my wife like a little one of those little 8-ounce portable ones that she can take to work with her.
I'm sorry, Joey Tiger,
Yeah.
Joey Tiger sent a very long message on Pride of Detroit. I'm trying to read it all
Okay.
to maybe condense it to a shorter question. So I'm gonna let you take the chat real quick.
Okay. I don't have anything more to say on Yetis. I'd like to get a cooler, but I don't have that option either. Um, we'll talk about a question that Dan asked earlier.
Go for it.
And I can't scroll back enough to find it again. But Dan essentially asked the if we were buying into the Lions were trying to trade up to get Caden Proctor.
Nope.
And I'm so tired of that question. And I don't mean it. I know Dan's setting us up, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not knocking on Dan at all here. But one report from a very established and reputable national guy versus every Detroit Lions beat writer. And people are still just locked on to like what Jeremiah said. Look, I've hinted at this before. Proctor was not in the top 3 amongst the Lions tackles. He wasn't. And Blake Miller was 2. So Caden Proctor was not the guy that the Lions were considering trading up for.
I was very annoyed that when Ari
Yes.
posted the clip that he did, he framed it like it was Proctor, like ignoring the context of the fact, well, ignoring the context that, because the way he framed it was as soon as Proctor went off the board, the Lions took their deal off the table. But if you watch the actual video, we only know that the deal was off the table after the Rams pick. And on the night of the draft, we heard Brad Holmes say, as soon as the Rams took Ty Simpson, we were like, we're gonna get Blake Miller. Obviously, I think their thought process was a little bit deeper than that. It was like, we're gonna get Blake Miller or Ruben Bain or this guy, and we're gonna be happy. But I would like if Brad Holmes hadn't said that the night of the draft, where like he doesn't have to protect against these allegations that like they were trying to trade up to get Proctor. He said it that night. It wasn't like, oh, there's this narrative happening that Proctor was our guy and we tried to trade up for him. If that had been out in the public before, like I could understand him be like, oh no, like we knew we were gonna get. But he said it that night. And that to me probably means he was being truthful.
Yeah, and everything I've heard says it wasn't Proctor. And I'm not alone. There's other beat writers that will say the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah. Look, if I was in the it was 100% Blake Miller, I would just say Blake Miller was their OT1. And I'm not. I'm saying he was their OT2. You know what I mean? Like if I was just trying to make it a Blake Miller thing. It's not. Proctor was on their board as a tackle, but lower. That's the way it was, folks. And again, when has the national media ever known what the Lions are going to do? Zero times the national media has known. So, just saying. I'm Just
All right. Joe A. Tiger's question can
Great.
really just be whittled down to the last paragraph here, which says, do you think the fact that the Lions just went out and grabbed 2 Michigan defensive players who spent the last year learning directly under Wink Markendale is the ultimate smoke signal that Shep is putting out his own spin on Seattle's system for next season?
Yes and no. I mean, like, because they kind of run this Baltimore style ever since they took Aiden, because Aiden came from that Baltimore style. So
True.
like there's elements of that Baltimore style in there, but there's also elements of the Saints from the 20 late 20 teens, you know what I mean? Like 2019, 2018. Like
Yeah.
so there's hints of that. There's hints of the Rams from pre like eh, there's a collection of areas that I guess they come from. So I don't think it's going to be necessarily like Seattle, but Seattle is adapted. Now I'm just focusing on the front first of all. If you're just focusing on the front, the Ravens now with Minter, and McDonald in Seattle,
Yep.
and Harbaugh in New York, and they all run this a similar type of system. And the Lions utilize some of that because I think it works, but they don't have the depth on the defensive line that Seattle does, or
Right.
or even did.
Right.
And that is, I think, what prevents what's is going to be the really big difference. Now, the secondary is going to be very different as well, but the key difference in what I think the heart of the question is the Lions aren't going to just rotate guys through. Like Seattle is basically just like rotating guys through all 4 of those spots,
Yeah.
and they're keeping guys fresh and they're attacking in waves, and that's makes them very effective. And they have good talent at both first and second level. The Lions are very heavily their starters are their guys, right? And so you're not going to get that rotational wave, but you're going to get some schematic influences,
Right.
like the way that you utilize a pass rushing linebacker as well as in a 4-man front. That's that
Right.
Sam Jack element. Like you're going to
Right.
get those influences. You're going to get the ability to stand your edge guys up and run with 2-3s. Like you're going to get that. There are elements that cross over.
I think at the heart of the question is something we were kind of talking about before, which is like how versatile and unpredictable they can be defensively. Mm-hmm. And whereas Seattle can use the amount of players that they can rotate through as being super versatile and being super unpredictable, I think the Lions are going to try to get that unpredictability out of just the versatility of those guys that you're talking about, of those like main starter guys. The fact that you can have Derek Moore or Aiden Hutchinson lining up with their hand in the dirt or as an off ball. Same kind of thing with Wanham. Like you're going to rely on that because you have so many tweeners. Like Aline can play anywhere from the nose to the 5. The fact that you kind of view the same versatility, although it hasn't yet been proven from Tyleek. You know, you can have Levi as someone who can line up to probably from like the 7 to the 3, right?
To the 1.
To the 1. And
he played 1 in college a lot. Yeah.
I do wonder if they want to build towards having. I mean, I'm sure every team wants to build towards having the kind of depth and rotation you can have in a Seattle-like system, but at the same time, when you have really, really good players making high-end contracts, it obviously becomes a little bit harder to do that.
Yeah, the trick is like Seattle doesn't have an Aiden. And
Right.
And with Aiden being in Detroit, you're going to lean on that.
Yeah.
Right. You're good.
Right.
And they just don't have, like, you're developing that depth, or you're developing like maybe a better starting talent. Like that's, I think, where Detroit's trying to, like, they're trying to have a better starting 4 as opposed to a solid starting 8. You know what I mean? And I feel like Seattle's comfortable having like 8 guys that they can roll through and stuff like that.
Right. I don't. You guys have more questions? We might just get out of here early. I'm starting to lose my energy here just because I haven't eaten. And my apologies for eating some dry roasted edamame on stream, but I've been hungry. All 22 Films guy, I don't know if he has a name, but his YouTube channel is generally very good. And I saw someone posted that Aiden clip in our feed, but I haven't watched it yet. Oh gosh, I need to change the jerky command, huh? I literally have that on my sheet of paper to do, and I haven't done it. But thanks for the reminder, LJ. POD 15 gets you 50% off at richfilm.com. Is 10 the absolute ceiling to how many offensive linemen make the week 1 53-man roster?
Typically.
That's a good question.
Typically, 10 is your number.
But the absolute ceiling, they could go 11. It wouldn't shock me.
Ooh, if they did, it would be unexpected for me. You're going to go minimum. Sure. You're going to go minimum of 8. The general rule is minimum of 8, max of 10.
Yeah.
And I am starting to lean towards 10 right now because of because one, I don't know everybody's position yet of the reserves.
Yeah.
You know, I want to see what happens. Like, can Juice play center and guard at a level that bumps a guy like Ben Barch? You know what I mean? Or we're gonna have to come up with something else. I just feel like the way that they're invested, the players that they have, the youth that they're still developing, the fact that they want that to be a strength. I don't know how much they're going to want to back off their depth in that area. So
I think 10's the right number, but I would rather have 11 than I'd rather have 8.
I'd rather go 9 than 11.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. But let's just do a little bit of math here. So you got your 5 starters. Let's just assume, for simplicity's sake, that Christian Mahogany is starting at left guard. So you got those 5 guys. Larry Borum is probably pretty safe as your swing guy,
6.
especially you're paying $5 million. Miles Frazier, young enough that you're probably going to keep him.
That's 7.
That's 7.
You can lock those 7 in my opinion.
I agree. So then
you need a center. That's your 8.
Backup center. So Juice Scruggs, Michael Neese, or Seth McLaughlin is 8.
One of them's 8.
You probably need at least one more interior offensive line backup because at this point you only have...
Again, that depends on Juice. If a guy like Juice or McLaughlin, just those 2, can play both center and guard... Then maybe you can get away with it with Frazier. And if Frazier can be guard and tackle, then maybe. But that's why I feel more flexible with like saying 9, because you could get away with something. Now, like if we go, if let's say it goes chalk and Juice is 8, Barch is 9, Manu is 10.
Right.
Is there an 11th guy that you like?
No, not really.
Yeah, right.
The guys, Devin Cochran, Michael Neese, Colby Sorsdal, Mason Miller, Seth McLaughlin, none of those guys feel necessary to keep.
Right. Especially when you already have the other 10. So for me, when I'm looking at that offensive line, I'm looking at, can someone knock off Scruggs, Barch, or Scruggs or Barch? And then can Manu win a spot?
Yeah.
Or can Frazier be acceptable enough as OT4 and guard 3?
Yep.
If Frazier can, and you're willing to step away from Manu because he still hasn't developed, then I could see it. At the same time, I think they're going to give Manu one more year. And if that's the case, then it becomes my last battle would be, can Scruggs play center 2 and guard 4?
Right.
And if he can't play guard 4, then you got to have a 10th. So I'm kind of in that 9-10 spot.
Sure. And I think that all makes sense. To me, I don't like only having 2 reserve interior offensive linemen, even if they can play multiple positions, just because I think you need to be a little bit more.
Trick is you just got to get
covered for injury.
you're just going to try and load these guys up as many as you can on the practice squad, right?
True.
Yes, I specifically said McLaughlin and Scruggs playing center and guard because I don't think Neese can play center and guard. I think Neese is a center only guy.
You're irrational.
He can play center.
Yeah, sure.
He can be a back. He can be a backup center. He has experience. Experience.
All right. Have you guys looked at the new Stick to the Model website?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that is. What is that? Is that the like off-season simulator website? I don't know what that is. It is, right? Okay, that is the front office website. I have not played around with that website enough to get a sense of what it's all about. I did just notice literally right now, the Lions dropped a 20-man podcast where he talks to all 7 draft picks. So I'm going to be consuming that this afternoon to see what they got to say, since we didn't get to talk to them during rookie minicamp like we normally would. Yeah, and I think that's going to put a close on today's episode. Thanks for joining us, spending your little morning/lunch break with, or maybe it's night where you're watching. Either way, we appreciate it. We will be live next Monday. Don't know what we're going to talk about, but hopefully something. For Pride of Detroit Direct subscribers, we'll get a Keith Abney first bite this week. Already in the can. It's a good episode. And yeah, that's all I got. Anything you want to say to the people before we get out of here, Erik?
Nope.
Great.
Enjoy your hopefully you're getting a 4-day weekend and people will enjoy it.
Ooh, good point. Monday's Memorial Day. I don't know if we're going to be live on Monday. We'll see. I'll check that out, Arcantus. Let me throw it in a tab here so I don't forget to look. But anyways, that'll do it for today's ep. Appreciate y'all for hanging out, whether you're on Twitch, YouTube, or watching over in the feed in Pride of Detroit. And we'll see you.